When I left Denver, I spent 27 years in Denver police, 22 of those with our SWAT team, with a dog, love dogs. And we were required to shoot only one time a year. Now think about that. And sometimes those shoot qualifications were 36 rounds one time a year. That's not enough.
You're telling me 2 magazines in a Glock once a year, and that's the training cops have to maintain?
That's it.
What do you train them to?
Yeah, and so
teachers and staff members.
Sure. So with Faster, the test that they pass at the end of, they have to do this every year. The test that they pass is the same as law enforcement has to pass every year, and to get out of the academy. We actually make it a little bit harder, and we require that they pass it at 100% in order to pass the Faster class. But the school board says, even though you need to qualify on this every year, we also expect you to do monthly training, quarterly scenario training. They actually do a whole lot more training. And since all of our instructors are active duty law enforcement at Faster, they can see this comparison live on, our lead instructor runs an academy. And so for him to be able to see that difference, and this is not I'm not throwing shade on law enforcement or anything. We really appreciate them. But not everybody who gets into law enforcement is a gun guy, so to speak, right. A gun guy or a gun girl. Typically, the folks that we see volunteering to be one of the armed staff members in a school, they are people who have carried a firearm.
One of the things I'm most proud about at the Independence Institute is a program called Faster, which is creating a life of its own. The idea is not just to feel like you're safe in schools, but to actually make sure that kids are safe in schools. Laura Carno runs that program, Faster, and Brett Titus runs an organization, a company called LifeSpot, which I want to get into in just a minute. But first, Faster's been around now for a number of years, and the idea of training teachers and faculty members about how to stop a shooting, how to provide first aid before folks come. Tell me how this has been growing.
Yeah, so here's the update. We're entering our 6th training year now. We've trained over, I know it's not like it's gone so quickly. We've trained over 250 school staffers. We are working with schools that represent 37 of Colorado's school districts.
37?
37 and there's 180 some.
173.
173, okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. 37, that's huge.
37, yeah. And some of them are rural school districts where we have the whole district. Some are a suburban district where the whole school district isn't, they don't have that policy of armed staff, but maybe some charter schools within that district. So that would be the whole 37.
It really is amazing. Let me start with this. After 9/11, we needed more people on airplanes who were security, and there weren't enough air marshals. And so I forget which the air marshals, where they lie in the order of bureaucracy, they started training pilots and up to their standards just for the airplane, not to bust drug dealers or anything, but in case there's a hijack, and they armed pilots. And now 1 out of every 10 flights, you have an armed pilot there. You don't even know it. And the idea of having an armed teacher still freaks people out, even if they are brought up to the same standards as an SRO, a school resource officer, or of a law enforcement officer. You've done a lot of the trainings and have been part of this. Is my comparison off between pilots carrying guns and teachers carrying guns, or faculties? It seems like they're trained for one specific thing, not for general law enforcement.
No, I think you're dead on. It's always better to have it there and not need it than the opposite. So to think about pilots, especially those of us that are up in the airplane, we're traveling around, it's refreshing to know that 1 out of 10, and that's pretty good numbers, but why not make it 10 out of 10 and make us all feel better when we're in the plane, right? So same thing in schools. What do? We worry about our kids. I know when my son was in school, it would have made me feel a lot better knowing there was an armed staffer that was going to protect my child. So opposed to just having a couple, and I mean the amount that these guys have staffers that are trained and that are out there is amazing, but we still need more.
How do you get over the emotion of this? As a guy who used to be anti-gun, the idea that we're going to force teachers to carry guns, and instead of teaching, everybody's going to be packing heat. That just seems so dangerous. It seems so wrong. It seems completely counter to the idea of a safe community for my kids.
Yeah, and most people don't have an issue with a school resource officer.
A cop.
Which is a sworn law enforcement officer, police, sheriff's office, somebody who's a full law enforcement officer.
Actually, I disagree with you, because in places like Boulder Valley, where they've gotten rid of cops,
right,
because they're cops.
Which is why I say most people, because there are those outliers in Denver and Boulder that believe there should be no law enforcement visible to children. But for the most part, when you're looking in suburban areas, in rural areas, most parents feel totally comfortable with a cop being in their kid's school. And we're not training, teachers or principals or whoever the armed staffers are. We're not training them to be cops. There's one narrow skill set that they have, and that's if, God forbid, an active killer comes into their children's school, they are trained to stop that killer before he or she kills children or kills staff members. So it's that one.
You're really going to force teachers or janitors or the principal to carry an M16? This is wrong.
So thanks for bringing that up. We at our website fastercolorado.com, we have a Busting the Myths document. Mm-hmm. And the reason I have that there is there are questions we get all the time, especially from people who oppose this policy. That is their number one question. Why do you think you can force teachers to carry guns? Nobody anywhere on the planet has ever suggested that anybody who doesn't want to carry a firearm should carry a firearm. And the fact is, we don't need it. We talked about 1 out of 10 pilots. We don't need every school staffer to be armed.
You're not going to force anyone.
Nobody.
Right, no one.
Yeah, and by the way, the people who ask the question, they know that's not the fact, that's not the case, and they continue to say it even though it's absurd.
But you got to admit, there is a weird emotional hurdle to get over on this one, because we have been trained that guns are not guns. There's some sort of, they have souls, they have intention, they have, they're self-actuating, that they're hateful, they're like swastikas, really. But the idea that there's going to be a gun in the same place where there's a kid, you're okay if there's a cop, but you say, well, these people aren't trained like cops. You actually do train them like cops for this narrow thing. You're not teaching them how to write tickets or get in car chases or how to do search and seizure. What are you teaching them?
Well, I'll throw that to you,
Sure.
Of course, but I just want to throw this part in there because I've heard that argument so many times. When, God forbid, that happens, who's the first person they call are the cops. When I left Denver, I spent 27 years in Denver police, 22 of those with our SWAT team, with a dog, love dogs, and we were required to shoot only one time a year. Now think about that. And sometimes those shoot qualifications were 36 rounds one time a year. That's not enough.
Wait. You're telling me 2 magazines in a Glock once a year, and that's the training cops have to maintain?
That's it.
What do you train them to?
Yeah, and so
teachers and staff members.
Sure. So with Faster, the test that they pass at the end of, they have to do this every year. The test that they pass is the same as law enforcement has to pass every year. And to get out of the academy, we actually make it a little bit harder, and we require that they pass it at 100% in order to pass the Faster class. But the school board says, even though you need to qualify on this every year, we also expect you to do monthly training, quarterly scenario training. They actually do a whole lot more training. And since all of our instructors are active duty law enforcement at Faster, they can see this comparison live on, our lead instructor runs an academy. And so for him to be able to see that difference, and this is not I'm not throwing shade on law enforcement or anything. We really appreciate them. But not everybody who gets into law enforcement is a gun guy, so to speak, right. A gun guy or a gun girl. Typically, the folks that we see volunteering to be one of the armed staff members in a school, they are people who have carried a firearm.
They're former police, former military,
or just ordinary
or former
citizens.
mass murderers.
No former mass murderers at all. But many of them are ordinary people who've just carried concealed firearm on their person for decades, and they are gun
honest, though,
people.
let me say that as somebody with a concealed weapons permit, I think I want somebody who is better trained than just that around kids.
Absolutely.
And around this situation. That there's a lot of people who carry a gun for protection, and they carry it everywhere. When a shooter comes into a school, I want to make sure that whoever's carrying a gun is trained for school shootings.
Right.
And you do that.
Yeah, and that's why we started Faster. So the law that allows school employees to be armed on campus is 17, 18 years old by now. Right. And back in the day when they first started, when the law first passed, and it was mostly these rural school districts that had armed staff, this is what we're hearing. We weren't around at the time, but what we're hearing is that school board said, find people who are armed and tell them to carry at school and go get their hours somewhere, because the insurance company does require them to have a certain number of hours of training. But we agree with you that it's a special thing. It's a completely different situation. You're in a school building with little children.
Pardon me for pushing back here, because talk to me about the insurance part, because a school district is not going to let people carry unless the school district is somehow indemnified for this. Because let's be honest, there's going to be liability, just like cops have liability. So do these school districts have insurance policies, and your training meets those qualifications?
Right, and it's covered by their insurance company. So there is a big insurance company in Colorado called the Colorado District Self-Insurance Pool. I think I'm getting all those words right. And they cover most of the traditional districts. Some of our charter schools have different insurance companies, but if somebody breaks a leg on the playground, they cover all of those things. They have riders if you have armed staff. And so to this insurance company who's financially on the hook if something bad happens, they say, let us know how many and we'll add those riders. And so it's covered. What's interesting to me is in Ohio, where we brought Faster out here from Ohio, where they started Faster Saves Lives just in the days following Sandy Hook. They have a little bit more diversified insurance group of insurers of schools out there, and some insurance companies have completely dropped armed schools. Some have kept everything the same, and some have reduced the policy premiums because they feel that those schools are safer. Mm-hmm. So I think over the long run, I think that all of that stuff will come out in the wash, and you're
going to find that schools where there's a sticker saying armed staff is going to be a huge deterrent.
Yep, exactly.
Before we get to LifeSpot, because I do want to get to that, I want to ask you about the other part of training. FASTER stands for what?
FASTER is Faculty Administrator Safety Training and Emergency Response. So it's the armed response to stop a killer, and it's the medical response to stop the bleeding.
Talk about the medical part, because everybody gets so excited about the gun part of that. For me, that's important to stop a shooter, but it takes minutes for cops to arrive or first aid. Sometimes lots of minutes. Right. Yeah. What's the training for Medicaid or medical? Medicaid.
I don't know about Medicaid.
You don't know Medicaid.
and we've added now.
Triage.
We've added now to our instructor team a guy who's a battalion chief for a fire agency in northern Colorado, that former Marine who does this stuff for a living. So he's great to have on our team. But it stopped the bleeding. So you're right. In Sandy Hook, it was 45 minutes before medics were cleared to enter the scene. How many children could have been saved if there were medically trained personnel, if there was equipment, tourniquets? And we train that. We send every class member away with a personal trauma kit that they carry on their person, because if you go respond to a killer in a school and you get shot, you can't save children if you die. You have to be able to self-apply a tourniquet to save your own life.
And know how to use it.
Yep.
It's not tricky. All right. This is where you come in, I think, which is when the worst happens and a school shooter comes in, I can only imagine the mayhem. We don't know who the bad guy is. Well, he's got a gun. You have to train teachers to be able to shoot somebody they might know in order to save more people. That's just got to be crazy. You don't know who the good guys are. You might not know who the bad guys are. The cops are going to come in, see the teacher with a gun, and they're going to take the teacher down. And we saw that happen out in, was it Westminster or Thornton?
Arvada.
Yeah.
The good guy got killed by a cop. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. You have an idea to stop it, and it's actually getting a lot of traction.
It is. You're going to find that every one of these mass shootings that we've had, you're going to run into the same challenges. And the number one challenge is, how do you get the good guys there faster than we do today? Well, the good guys are the guys with guns. Through my experience in 30 years of wearing a uniform and serving and protecting, my best idea is to have more guns closer or right there on scene to stop that threat. So that being said, response time is number one. You've got to get the good guys with guns there quicker. Then, as you said, the location of it, where to even start to speed up that response time. You take any of these bigger campuses, and it can be a nightmare trying to find your way around. Where is the shooter? 2 or 3 is communication. 911, great system for filtering, but in these instances, we saw it at Arapahoe High School. The minute the shot was fired, and God rest her soul, Claire Davis was shot, everybody called 911. And that particular day, you only had 6 dispatchers on that day. And you had hundreds, if not thousands, of people calling, some with pertinent information. So the communication gets shut down. There's no way that people can relay that communication of where the threat's at or what's going on. Same with the injured. How do we know where the injured people are to get the medics in there faster than we do today? So the other challenge you're going to have is the identification. Those that are armed inside that school, who are the good guys and who's the bad guy? Well, that's where LifeSpot comes in. We solve 7 major challenges in any of the active shooter, active threat events that we've had in this country. We solve all 7 of them. Number 1 being response time. Call 911 right now. I was involved in a situation just a couple weeks ago. Somebody tried to call 911. They were put on hold for about 3 or 4 minutes. And it was Denver, right on the border of Denver and Littleton. And with our system, the minute somebody opens that app, it's less than 6 seconds that all the staff, law enforcement, fire, EMS, everyone that needs to know is going to know what's going on and what location in 6 seconds. Let me
pull myself back from this a little bit. So what I'm hearing are 2 different complementary services that work on a school shooting. One, to make sure that staff knows how to handle it, can stop a shooter, can triage. The other one is all the mass craziness that happens. Where in the school is the shooter? Where is this? And because there's an app for everything, you guys have developed an app for this. And I think about some of the cavernous high schools. My daughter went to a high school that they did a training. They did a shooter training there with the cops on a weekend. They couldn't find the shooter.
Yeah.
And this was a training, so I can understand the need for it. So the idea of this is people who are staff have the app, they can hit a button, and then all of a sudden, let me see if I got this right, other staff knows what's happening, law enforcement knows what's happening, emergency response knows, and so there's better, not perfect, better communication and instant.
Correct. Yep, instant. Again, 6 seconds or less, you think about how fast these situations happen. We've got to get those good guys there a lot faster than we do today. And once again, to complement each other, we fit in perfect with what these guys do because their staff is there. They're going to get that same information in 6 seconds, and they're going to be able to respond, beating law enforcement by probably several minutes.
You had an event that I went to. Both of you put this on, and it was at the Sanctuary Golf Course, which is a really tough golf course to get into. There was no golfing, sadly,
right.
But it was a beautiful place to have a meeting there. And I've had him on the show. I've gotten to know him. But Kendra Castilla's father, Jon, spoke about, and he's been through the program.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I started inviting Jon Castillo, who, for viewers that don't know, Jon and Maria Castillo lost their only child, Kendrick Castillo, when he charged one of the shooters in the STEM school shooting.
And saved who knows how many lives.
Along with a couple other guys who charged the other shooter, saved the lives of, we think, everybody in that classroom. But started inviting Jon to come speak to the faster classes like we do with Evan Todd, who's a Columbine survivor, because we think it's really important, in addition to all of the skills that they learn in class, that they hear from people who have some experience to this and understand the seriousness of the role that these folks are signing up for. So Jon came to speak to a few of our classes, and he just mentioned, I'd love to come through. He's a shooter himself. He said, I'd love to come through the class. So we actually had Jon Castillo come through as just Jon, no last name, not Kendrick's dad. And on day 3, when we have our guests and sponsors come into the class to speak with folks, Quinn Cunningham, our lead instructor, said, on day 1, we talked about these different shootings. We talked about Kendrick Castillo. What you don't know is that you've been shooting alongside Kendrick's dad the whole time. Wow. And the whole class was just blown away. But it really represents, I think, a good commitment on Jon Castillo's part. He's an advocate for this program, for this policy, and he really wanted to understand it so that when he's speaking about it, he knows how tough the class is.
Well, also just the personal story, to talk to he and his wife, the pride they have about their son, the heartache that they have, and that he's really dedicated himself to say no more of this. Anyway, you put together this this conference, and I was amazed how many different people came from law enforcement, from school districts, from people who are concerned about parents. What was the purpose of the event?
I is getting into this realm more so with LifeSpot. What I've noticed is there's a lot of gaps in school safety. A lot of things that we're doing that are just downright dangerous to a degree, and we can improve on a lot more. So I thought, let's bring in people that have been there, that have done that really have the experience of what really happens and what things we have to fix. So that's why I came up with the idea. Let's bring in a group of experts and talk to Laura about it, and they jumped all over it. Yeah, yes, yep. And
pardon me for jumping in here. What's amazing here is there's a difference between being safe and feeling safe.
Yes.
And everyone wants to feel safe, but if you want to be safe, you have to look at this in a way that's non-emotional.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is, we don't have enough people who are trained in the skies to prevent another 9/11 without armed pilots who are not compensated for it, but go through the same training. In the same way, when you look at the math of this, I don't care if you have a school resource officer, a guy with a gun. You need people there at different places who can handle a situation. I don't see any other way of really addressing this. You can try to ban everything you want. That's not going to do much, as we've seen. But if you care about your kids' lives, you need to start looking at this, which is why more school districts are looking at it, and more people around the country, as I learned in the conference.
Yeah, it's, go ahead. No, please.
And I was just going to say, we have seen over the years, especially, after Sandy Hook, after Parkland, after all these terrible tragedies, we've seen school districts put on school safety events for parents to come talk about school safety. They won't talk about the things that Brett does. They won't talk about the things that we do. And we were seeing, as Brett said, these gaps. Parents want this information. They want to understand what these more aggressive procedures are, because parents have one goal: children alive. That's it. They don't care how it feels to a teacher, how it feels to an administrator or school board member. They want that kid coming home alive every single day, and that's not too high a bar. They send their kids off to school to be educated and kept safe, and they want to know these things. So we felt we were really filling that gap, that parents and school board members and other school administrators needed this information.
And the feedback that we got from parents. This is why we're going to do the second annual. We're going to do this every year. That we got to fill that gap. For example, just in our local community, those that are in charge of school safety, I've had people say to me, well, certain products and certain things that we've spent millions of dollars on, such as camera systems.
Right.
Camera systems are great if you want to know who spray painted the locker, who stole the backpack. But for an
or if you want to
shooter,
collect information after the shooting,
absolutely,
yes, law enforcement wants to see this.
Exactly that. And I had a gentleman say, well, let's look at it, but we have to look at the ROI, the return on investment. I fell out of my chair. Return on investment, I don't know what's worth it. Saving one kid? Is that a good return on your investment? So these are the mental mindset that
also
are coming from...
Compared to a lot of the remodels that are happening, putting up entrances, you can only go in this one place, bulletproof glass here, exit doors in other places, there are real costs to this compared to what is a very small cost of bringing people who are willing, able, and pass the trainings to do this. You said you were going to do this again in the fall.
Yes.
When?
November 19th is the date at Sanctuary again. Dave Liniger, who owns Sanctuary, he is behind this entire project. That's why he lets us have the Sanctuary, and people love to be there. I love to be there, and to have that type of an event and that atmosphere really
Is it open to the public? Can people come if they just want to come?
We're talking about that now.
Do they have to be involved in the policy / politics / machinery of it?
What we're going to do is kind of vet through some of the people. Parents, of course, we want parents there, so we want a good mixture of everybody. It will be limited seating to 200, so we'll kind of go through that process as we go. So I don't want to say it's not open to general public, but we want as many... you have to be involved in the community decisions.
What's amazing
parents.
about this is when you started this 6 years ago, people wouldn't take it seriously. People are like, oh, that's a little fringy out there. No, this is not fringy when you have 37 school districts, when you have charter schools doing it, when you have states like Ohio becoming the norm in this. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to save kids, then you have to look at this. You have to have an honest debate about it, and you have to look at the facts. That's what's so difficult. People want to get information about the event. Where should they go?
LifeSpotApp.com. There'll be a link on there for the event coming up, so they can check it out, the times, the date, etc. We'll have a sign up on there as well. It's not up there today, but it will be in a few days.
To look at LifeSpot to get an idea of how we can solve the communications mess and confusion, whether there's armed staff or not armed staff.
Yes. That's good distinction.
That's important. You need to know this information, and it seems like software is a pretty inexpensive way compared to building new products. People want to learn about Faster.
Yep.
Where do they go?
They can go to fastercolorado.com. And since we are a project of the Independence Institute, I always recommend that people go to Independence Institute's website, thinkfreedom.org, sign up for the emails there, and they will get all the information about Faster there as well.
And remaining seconds here, there needs to be a discussion brought to school boards. And so let me leave it with this. Talk to your school boards about this, because it could be your child that you're saving. Hey, thank you, Laura, for all of it.
Thank you.
Brett, thank you. Good luck.
John, thank you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button, too. You don't want to miss a single show.